All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice question series where we go through another set of questions together and break them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. A tennis coach is working on a shot called a volley with a student. The student hits two volleys in a row out of bounds. The tennis coach, in response, tells the student they need to now hit 10 volleys in a row correctly before taking a short break. What type of punishment procedure is the tennis coach using? Okay, so we are looking at a punishment procedure question. And yes, we are always looking at the result of the consequence as far as how it changes behavior to determine what type of consequence it is, but we do have specific procedures that are meant for punishment. In this case, we have a tennis coach and they're teaching this volley to the student. The student does it wrong twice. So now the coach says you need to hit 10 volleys in a row correctly. So what do we call it when we make or request that our learner engages in the right response over and over again? A, overcorrection. Yes, this would be a positive practice overcorrection procedure. You must engage in the right response over and over again. What about B, response cost? With the response cost, we're removing something as a result of the response. And this is not a response cost situation. C, timeout. Has the tennis coach put the student in timeout? Have they withheld reinforcement? Have they removed them from the court? No. So they're not putting them in timeout. And then D, response blocking. Has any response blocking occurred? Again, no. The tennis coach is simply using overcorrection. You've made this mistake. I now want you to do it correctly 10 times in a row, and then we'll take a short break. So we're using a positive practice overcorrection procedure in this case. A behavior analyst and a client agree on a behavioral contract where the client will earn $50 if they go 2 full weeks without missing a homework assignment. At the completion of the contract, the client missed just one assignment over the full 2 weeks, which is by far the best the client has ever done. What should the behavior analyst do? All right, remember, on your exam, we are going by the book, right? In practice, things sometimes are done a little differently to adapt to situations. But on your exam, we need to go by the book, the most technical way that ABA is done. So in this case, we have a behavior analyst and a client who are engaged in a behavioral contract. And remember, with a behavioral contract, once it's agreed upon, that's it. And we have to follow through with that contract. This client is supposed to earn $50 if they don't miss a homework assignment for 2 weeks. However, the client missed just one assignment over the full 2 weeks. By far the best the client has ever done. So the client overachieves. They only miss one assignment over the 2 full weeks. What should the behavior analyst do if they are to follow how contracts are supposed to be done or performed? A, provide the full reinforcement in an effort to maintain behavior progress. Since the contract was signed, since the contingency was agreed upon, no reinforcement should be given. The same with B, provide partial reinforcement since the goal was partially achieved. There should be no reinforcement provided to this client because the contract was not fulfilled. So C, provide no reinforcement and honor the contract is the correct answer. If you're going to do a contract and you're going to sign the contract, if the contract is completed, you've got to go with whatever you agreed upon. That's the whole point of that contract. And then D, consult with the client's guardian on what should happen next. The client's guardian should have already been involved in the contract process. Everyone must agree first before it is signed. Once it is signed, once it is executed, that's it. You've got to follow the contract, even in a situation like this. A behavior analyst is asked by a neighbor if they are able to provide ABA services to their child. The neighbor expresses to the analyst that there are so few analysts in their town. The behavior analyst has seen the neighbors a couple of times at neighborhood parties in a social setting. How should the behavior analyst respond to remain ethical? So we got a few different things going on here, right? And this is clearly some sort of dual relationship, conflict of interest question, because this analyst is asked by their neighbor if they can provide ABA services to the child. Now, what are the details? Well, there are not many analysts in their town. And that's important, right? Because there are exceptions, right? If no services are available except for just this analyst, then that may be an exception to something that may be unethical. However, this analyst has seen the neighbors a couple of times at neighborhood parties in a social setting. Now, does that qualify as being close enough friends to warrant the analyst to not be able to provide services? Maybe, maybe not. It's not the analyst's fault they're neighbors and that they've seen each other at neighborhood parties. It doesn't seem like they're as if they're hanging out all the time. If they've only been socially together a few times at neighborhood parties, that doesn't necessarily seem like it's crossing the line. So given all this information, how should the behavior analyst respond? A, the analyst may accept this case as long as it remains a strictly professional relationship. Yes, given the fact there are not many analysts in the town, given the fact the analyst has only really seen this person at a neighborhood party, as long as they remain professional, there does not seem to be an issue taking this case. What about B? Because we always read all of our answer choices. The analyst should not accept this case since they are neighbors. Just because you're neighbors doesn't mean you're professional or you're personally involved in any way. Just because you're neighbors doesn't mean you've crossed any sort of lines. C, the analyst should not accept this case because the analyst has seen the neighbors in a social setting. Again, you might see people you work with out. That's just the nature of it, especially if you're in a small town or a small city. It might happen. As long as you aren't crossing lines and creating dual relationships, that's okay. D, the analyst may accept this case, but can no longer attend neighborhood social gatherings. That's the analyst's choice. But again, you may see people you know and work with in ABA out and about. Just because you live in a small town or a small city and people see each other doesn't restrict you from taking on certain cases. What restricts you from cases is when there's a dual relationship created and a conflict of interest may start because of those professional and personal boundaries. So the analyst can accept this case as long as it remains a strictly professional relationship. A full functional analysis reveals that a client's elopement behavior trends upwards during the demand condition, but not during the other conditions. If the client's behavior analyst wants to use a task chain to teach this client, what type of chaining should they try first based on this information? All right, kind of an interesting question here because we start with a functional analysis and then talk about chaining. Now, based on this information is doing a lot of work here because we have to just go on what we know here. And so if we know the client's elopement behavior trends upwards during the demand condition, well, it seems like the client is trying to escape. Because if we visualize our analysis and the behavior is going upwards when there's a demand placed, then given a functional analysis, the client is trying to escape. And so what the question is really asking is, what type of task chain would we likely want to use or try to use based on this information for escape? What do we want to use? A forward chaining, a backwards chaining, a total task, or an interruption strategy? Well, you are likely going to want to use a backwards chaining strategy if we are for sure that the function is escape. And why is that? Well, if you use a forward chaining, let's say, or a total task, if we know the client escapes during demands, what's going to happen when you place a demand on the client to do the first step? They're likely to try and escape. With a backwards chaining procedure, you can avoid or prevent a lot of escape because you're helping the client through the task. And the only thing they need to do is the last step in the chain, which then offers escape. So backwards chaining is really effective usually when we know for sure the function is escape. So in this case, if we know that the elopement happens during the demand condition and we're relatively sure that it happens for escape, then we would likely want to use a backwards chaining first based on this information. A gymnast believes she has perfected her floor routine for her upcoming competition. After evaluation, her coach agrees that the routine should not be changed. However, the coach thinks that some of the moves in the routine should be refined as much as possible. What type of teaching would help refine these moves? So we have a situation where we want to refine moves. When we talk about refining, you're just changing the dimension of the behavior. Because the gymnast thinks her routine is perfect, the coach agrees the routine should not be changed, but we want to refine some of the moves. We want to alter characteristics of these responses as much as possible. And so if you want to just refine a behavior, you're not trying to necessarily change it. You're just refining it. You're changing a dimension of it. What are we going to use? A, shaping within topographies. Yes, when we shape within topographies, we are changing a dimension of the behavior, very often a magnitude of that behavior. You're not changing the response as a whole or the behavior as a whole. You're just refining and changing aspects of that response, keeping the same response, but changing an aspect. For example, maybe we go quicker, maybe we go slower. The response looks the same as the same. It's just maybe faster or slower. Shaping across topographies is what we often think about when we think about shaping, where we're changing approximations of the behavior. So the behavior is changing completely each time. Task chaining is not going to help refine the moves because task chaining, we're teaching steps to a larger behavior. And then D, none of the above, we know is not the right answer because if we're going to refine moves, then we should shape within those topographies. Keep the same topography, just change an aspect. Thank you for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.